The winter of 1944 hit the Appalachian Mountains harder than most folks could remember. In a forgotten workshop on the outskirts of Cumberland, Maryland, Samuel Hartwick stood over a makeshift workbench, his calloused hands covered in wood shavings and motor oil. The 52-year-old former coal miner had become something the Army brass couldn't quite categorize. Too old for active duty, too stubborn to sit idle, and too damn clever for his own good. Sam had lost his son Michael at Normandy 6 months earlier. The telegram came on a Tuesday, delivered by a nervous kid who couldn't have been more than 17. Since that day, something fundamental had shifted in Sam's chest, like gears grinding without lubrication. He stopped going to church, stopped talking to neighbors. The only thing that kept him breathing was the obsession growing in his workshop. The U.S. Army had set up a temporary logistics base 3 miles from his property, coordinating supply routes through the mountains. Sam had offered his services dozens of times. He was a trained machinist, had worked with explosives in the mines, understood trajectories and force distributions better than most engineers. But every time, the same answer came back. Too old, no formal military training, liability concerns. So Sam built it anyway. The weapon didn't look like much. Constructed primarily from reclaimed lumber, tractor parts, and a modified engine from a 1936 Ford, it resembled a deranged carnival ride more than military hardware. But the genius was in the camouflage system. Sam had developed a technique using compressed sawdust mixed with pine resin and iron filings. When applied to the wooden frame and baked with a torch, it created a surface that looked like weathered bark from any distance beyond 50 feet. In the forest, it was practically invisible. The firing mechanism was crude but effective. Sam had adapted principles from his mining days, using controlled combustion in a reinforced chamber. Couldn't match the range of a standard howitzer, but for mountain terrain with narrow passes, it didn't need to. The real innovation was mobility. The entire assembly could be broken down and relocated by 3 men in under 20 minutes. Colonel Herbert Morrison first heard about Sam's project from a supply sergeant who'd caught glimpses through the workshop windows. Morrison was a by-the-book West Pointer, 3rd-generation military, with a face that looked like it had been carved from the same granite as Mount Rushmore. He arrived at Sam's property on a freezing Thursday morning, accompanied by 2 MPs and a captain from Ordnance. Sam was testing the traversing mechanism when they pulled up. "Colonel Morrison, this is private property," Sam said without looking up. His voice had the gravelly quality of someone who'd spent 20 years breathing coal dust. "Mr. Hartwick, I'm here about the artillery piece you've been constructing." Morrison's tone carried the weight of official disapproval. "You're aware this violates approximately 14 federal regulations?" Sam finally turned around. His face was weathered like old leather, but his eyes held a sharpness that made younger men uncomfortable. "My son died following orders from men like you, Colonel. Men who sent him onto a beach with equipment that jammed in the sand. So forgive me if I'm not overly concerned with your regulations." The colonel's jaw tightened. "I understand your loss, Mr. Hartwick, but you cannot simply build weapons systems in your backyard. This is not how things work." Sam wiped his hands on an oil-stained rag. "How things work, Colonel, is that boys are dying because we're fighting the last war with the last war's thinking. I've studied the reports from the European theater. I know about the supply line attacks in the Ardennes. I know about convoy ambushes in the Vosges. And I know that our response times are too slow and our artillery is too visible." Morrison stepped closer to the weapon, examining it with barely concealed disdain. "This is constructed from wood and farm equipment. You expect me to believe this could function in combat conditions?" "I expect you to believe physics," Sam replied. "Force, trajectory, concealment. The materials don't matter if the principles are sound." The captain from Ordnance spoke up for the first time. "Sir, we should probably confiscate this and file charges for unauthorized weapons manufacture." Morrison nodded slowly. "Mr. Hartwick, I'm shutting this operation down effective immediately. You will cease all work on this device. Any further activity will result in your arrest. Am I clear?" Sam's hands clenched the rag tighter, but his voice remained steady. "Crystal clear, Colonel." As the military vehicles drove away, Sam stood in the doorway of his workshop, watching exhaust fumes dissipate in the cold mountain air. Inside, the Sawdust Camouflaged Howitzer sat silent, waiting. Sam had built it for Michael, for every kid who died because the brass was too rigid to adapt. They could shut him down, threaten him, file their paperwork. But they couldn't make him forget. And they couldn't kill the hunger for justice that burned in his chest like a forge that would never go cold. 3 days after the colonel's visit, Sam received an official letter from the War Department. The language was sterile, bureaucratic, final. His workshop would be subject to monthly inspections. Any materials deemed suitable for weapons manufacture would be confiscated. The letter concluded with a thinly veiled threat about sedition and wartime cooperation. Sam burned it in the wood stove. What they didn't know was that he'd already made detailed blueprints. Every measurement, every modification, every innovation in the camouflage system was documented in a leather journal he kept hidden beneath a loose floorboard. The physical weapon might be gone, but the knowledge remained. The real humiliation came the following Tuesday. Sam had driven into town for supplies when he noticed a crowd gathered outside Miller's general store. As he approached, he realized they were looking at a newspaper posted in the window. The headline made his stomach drop. Local man building illegal weapons. Army intervenes. The article painted him as a dangerous crank, a grief-stricken father who'd lost touch with reality. It quoted Colonel Morrison extensively, describing the workshop as a safety hazard and Sam as emotionally unstable. The piece concluded with a warning to other citizens about taking matters into their own hands during wartime. When Sam entered the store, conversations stopped. Old friends suddenly found their shoelaces fascinating. Martha Collins, who'd baked him casseroles after Michael's death, physically turned away when he passed her aisle. At the counter, Tom Miller barely made eye contact. "That'll be $4.30, Sam." The casual warmth they'd shared for 15 years had evaporated overnight. Sam paid in silence and left. Outside, he heard laughter from a group of younger men near the post office. One of them, Danny Kruger, called out loud enough for half the street to hear. "Hey Hartwick, you gonna build us a tank next? Maybe a submarine from chicken wire?" More laughter followed him down the street. By the time Sam reached his truck, his hands were shaking. Not from anger, though plenty of that burned through him. It was something deeper, more corrosive. They'd taken his contribution and twisted it into a joke. They'd taken his grief and weaponized it against him. That evening, as darkness settled over the mountains, Sam sat in his empty workshop. The Sawdust Howitzer was gone, hauled away by military transport 2 days earlier. All that remained were oil stains on the concrete floor and the ghost of something that could have mattered. He opened his leather journal, running his fingers over the precise technical drawings. Somewhere in Europe, convoys were being destroyed because commanders relied on the same tactics, the same visible equipment, the same predictable patterns. Boys were dying while men like Morrison worried about regulations and proper channels. Sam closed the journal and stared into the darkness beyond his workshop windows. They'd shut him down, humiliated him, tried to break him. But grief has a peculiar quality. It doesn't extinguish, transforms. 2 weeks passed in bitter silence. Sam kept to himself, avoided town, let his beard grow wild. The inspections came like clockwork. Young lieutenants poking through his tools, cataloging wrenches and hammers as if they were nuclear secrets. He endured it all with the same stone-faced expression he'd worn in the coal mines when the foreman was watching. Then, on a frozen Monday morning, everything changed. A black sedan pulled up to his workshop just after dawn. No military markings, no flags or insignia, just dark paint and darker windows. When the rear door opened, a man in civilian clothes stepped out. He was thin, sharp-featured, with wire-rimmed glasses that caught the early light. He carried a leather briefcase and walked with the precise gait of someone who measured every step. "Mr. Hartwick," the man said, extending a hand. "My name is Richard Vasquez, Office of Strategic Services." Sam didn't shake the hand. "I've had enough visitors from Washington." Vasquez smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "I'm not from Washington, Mr. Hartwick. I'm from the people who actually fight wars, not the ones who write regulations about them. May I come in?" Against his better judgment, Sam stepped aside. Inside the workshop, Vasquez placed his briefcase on the workbench and clicked it open. He removed a folder thick with photographs and field reports. He spread them across the surface like a dealer laying out cards. These were taken in the Hurtgen forest 3 days ago, Vasquez said, tapping a grainy photograph. 6 American supply convoys. Ambushed. Destroyed. 83 men dead. The Germans are using a new tactic, mobile artillery hidden in the forest canopy. Our scouts can't spot them until it's too late. Our counter-battery fire is always 10 minutes behind. Sam studied the photographs, his machinist's eye automatically analyzing angles and positions. Colonel Morrison sent us your confiscated weapon, Vasquez continued. His recommendation was that we destroy it and forget you exist. But someone in our research division actually looked at it. Really looked at it. Your camouflage system, Mr. Hartwick, is 30 years ahead of anything we have. Sam's jaw tightened. So you want to steal my design? Vasquez removed his glasses and met Sam's eyes directly. I want you to build 6 of them. Fully functional. Ready for combat deployment in 3 weeks. You'll have unlimited resources. A team of engineers will follow your specifications and complete authority over the project. The offer hung in the air like smoke. And Morrison? Reports to me on this operation, Vasquez said. If you're worried about bureaucrats getting in your way, don't be. I eat bureaucrats for breakfast. Sam felt something shift in his chest. That grinding sensation that had plagued him since Michael's death suddenly found traction. Purpose. Direction. He looked at the photographs again. 83 men. 83 families getting telegrams on random Tuesdays. If you've been following this story and want to see how Sam turns his pain into something that actually saves lives, hit that subscribe button right now. Because what happens next is going to change everything. 3 weeks, Sam said quietly. I'll need 3 weeks. You've got 2, Vasquez replied. The facility appeared overnight. 12 miles north of Cumberland, deep in restricted forest territory. A warehouse that hadn't existed on any map suddenly bristled with activity. Vasquez delivered on every promise. 15 machinists, 8 welders, a metallurgist from Pittsburgh, and enough raw materials to build a small navy. Sam worked like a man possessed. 18-hour days, sleeping on a cot near the assembly floor, eating sandwiches without tasting them. The engineers initially resisted taking orders from a coal miner, but after Sam redesigned their reinforcement system and increased the firing chamber efficiency by 40%, skepticism turned to respect. The sawdust camouflage proved the most challenging element to mass produce. The mixture required precise ratios. Too much resin and it became brittle, too little and it wouldn't adhere. Sam spent 3 days perfecting a baking process using modified industrial ovens, creating a surface that could withstand rain, snow, and explosive percussion without losing its bark-like appearance. By day 9, they had 2 functional prototypes. By day 12, 6 complete units ready for field testing. On day 14, they were crated and loaded onto transport ships bound for Le Havre. Vasquez appeared the night before deployment, carrying a bottle of Kentucky bourbon and 2 glasses. They sat in the empty warehouse, surrounded by sawdust and the ghost of frantic creation. You should know something, Vasquez said, pouring 2 fingers in each glass. Morrison tried to have this project shut down 4 times. Called everyone from senators to supply chiefs. I had to burn a lot of favors to keep you operational. Sam took the glass but didn't drink. Why did you? Vasquez stared into his bourbon. Because I'm tired of watching good ideas die in committee while bad ones get boys killed. And because your son deserved better than what he got on that beach. The words hit Sam harder than any insult in town ever could. His throat tightened. They shipped out the next morning. 11 days later, the telegram arrived. But this one was different. It came from Vasquez, marked classified, delivered by courier in the middle of the night. Sam's hands shook as he opened it. Hurtgen Forest Operation Success. 6 units deployed. 48 hours of operation. Results. 12 enemy artillery positions destroyed. 6 supply convoys protected. 0 detection by enemy forces. Estimated 300+ American lives saved. Your camouflage system performed beyond all projections. War Department requesting immediate production of additional units. Congratulations, Mr. Hartwick. You just changed how we fight this war. Sam read it 3 times before his vision blurred. 6 convoys. The ones they'd tried to ban his weapon over. The ones Morrison said were impossible to protect. All safe. All rolling forward with supplies that would keep soldiers fed, armed, alive. He walked to his workshop and pulled out Michael's photograph from the drawer. His son smiled back at him in uniform, young and proud and gone. This one's for you, kid, Sam whispered. Spring came to Cumberland with a fury of wildflowers and birdsong that seemed almost offensive in its beauty. Sam had returned to his workshop, but everything had changed. The monthly inspections had stopped. The whispers in town had shifted from mockery to uncomfortable silence, then finally to something approaching respect. The second telegram from Vasquez arrived in April. War Department authorization approved. Hartwick Camouflage System now standard protocol for mobile artillery units. 17 additional installations operational across European theater. Eisenhower personally commended the innovation. You are requested in Washington for formal recognition. Sam declined the trip to Washington. Recognition wasn't what he'd built the weapon for. But he did accept the contract to train new production teams, traveling between facilities in Maryland, Pennsylvania, and Virginia. Everywhere he went, young engineers looked at his calloused hands with new eyes. The coal miner who'd lost his son had given them a tool that brought other sons home. The real moment came in late May. Colonel Morrison appeared at Sam's workshop on a Tuesday afternoon. No MPs this time. No official vehicle. Just the colonel in a plain sedan, looking older than his years. They stood in awkward silence before Morrison spoke. I was wrong, Mr. Hartwick. He said it without qualification or excuse. I came here to tell you that directly. I let protocol and procedure blind me to something that could have saved lives earlier. That's on me. Not the regulations. Me. Sam studied the man who'd shut him down, humiliated him, tried to erase his contribution. The anger that had burned so hot months ago had cooled to something harder, more refined. My son followed men like you into battle, Sam said quietly. Men who valued order over innovation. I hated you for that, Colonel. Hated you for months. Morrison nodded, accepting the blow. But you came here, Sam continued. You could have sent a letter. Could have ignored this entirely. You came here and said the words. That takes something most men don't have. He extended his hand. Morrison shook it, his grip firm but not aggressive. For what it's worth, the units saved my nephew's convoy last month in the Rhineland. So this is personal for me now too. After Morrison left, Sam stood in his workshop as evening shadows stretched across the floor. The space felt different now. Not haunted by absence, but filled with purpose that extended beyond these walls. Somewhere in Europe, his weapon was speaking the language of survival. Every convoy that made it through, every artillery position destroyed before it could fire, every soldier who saw another sunrise, they were Michael's legacy as much as his. The grief hadn't disappeared. It never would. But it had transformed into something that mattered, something that saved lives instead of taking them. Sam picked up his tools and got back to work. There were still improvements to make. Still innovations waiting to be discovered in the marriage of wood, resin, and stubborn determination. The war wasn't over yet. September 1947, 3 years after the war ended. The workshop in Cumberland had expanded into something Sam barely recognized. What started as a single man's grief-fueled obsession now employed 47 people across 2 buildings. The Hartwick Engineering Company specialized in industrial camouflage systems, everything from oil derricks to communications towers. Militaries from 6 allied nations had contracts in place. But Sam still kept the original workspace exactly as it had been. On a warm autumn morning, a young man in a crisp army uniform appeared at the main entrance. He was maybe 22, with nervous eyes and an envelope clutched in his hands. The receptionist directed him to the back building where Sam was reviewing blueprints for a new project. Mr. Hartwick? The young man's voice cracked slightly. My name is Thomas Chen. I'm stationed at Fort Meade now, but during the war I was a radio operator with the 28th Infantry Division. Sam set down his pencil, giving the soldier his full attention. I was in one of those convoys, Thomas continued. December 1944, Hurtgen Forest. We were hauling ammunition and medical supplies when we heard the explosions. But they weren't hitting us. They were hitting the German positions before they could hit us. We found out later it was your weapons. Your camouflage system. He opened the envelope with shaking hands and removed a photograph. It showed a young couple holding a newborn baby. This is my wife Sarah and our daughter Emily. She was born last month. Thomas's eyes glistened. I came here because I needed you to know that she exists because of what you built. I got to come home. I got to meet the love of my life. I got to become a father. All because you refused to give up. Sam's throat constricted. He took the photograph with hands that suddenly felt very old and very young at the same time. What was your son's name? Thomas asked quietly. Michael, Sam replied. Michael James Hartwick. Thomas stood straighter, coming to attention. Then, with your permission, sir, our next child, if we're blessed with a son, his middle name will be Michael. So that name keeps living. So that sacrifice means something that echoes forward. Sam couldn't speak. He simply nodded, gripping the photograph like a lifeline. After Thomas left, Sam walked to the original workshop. Michael's photograph still hung on the wall, next to the patents, the commendations, the letters from soldiers who'd made it home. He'd received hundreds of them over the years. Each one a life saved. Each one a family kept whole. The pain of loss never disappeared. But it had been forged into something that created life instead of destroying it. Sam touched his son's photograph gently. We did good, kid. We did real good. Outside, the autumn sun painted the mountains in shades of gold. In workshops across America, engineers were building systems that would protect the next generation. And somewhere in Fort Meade, a baby girl named Emily was discovering her fingers for the first time, utterly unaware that her existence was a testament to what one grieving father could accomplish with sawdust, stubborn determination, and love that refused to die.